Good morning, viewers, and welcome to the Thursday edition of the Economy and Politics Show. Today is November 19th, 2020. Spotlight is brought to federal government activities, but what happens at the state is also important, and that's why we dedicate this segment to looking at developments in the state level. Today, we continue our update on State Budget 2021. Some states have also sent in their proposals, and we'll take part 2 of this segment as we will continue this in subsequent editions to give you how the various states are presenting their budgets, their estimates, and distributions. All these are very important for the public to know and also to demand accountability. Let's give the outline that we have today. First, like we said, focus is States and Budget 2021, Part 2. The outline is the States and Budget 2021. And the fact that states have received 676 billion naira in third quarter 2020, according to the National Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative. And also, according to SEC, Nigeria, the Security and Exchange Commission, states have borrowed 900 billion naira from the capital markets since 1978. Let's begin with states and budget 2021. Nasarawa State recently presented its budget proposal for 2021. The estimate is 112 billion naira. 112 billion naira is the estimate of the budget of Nasarawa State. In terms of the theme, because all the budgets have themes, at least over 90% of the budgets presented by state governments have themes. The theme for Nasarawa State is the budget of economic recuperation. The recurrent expenditure is 51 billion naira, which is lower compared to the capital budget expenditure, which is 54 billion naira, meaning that Nasarawa State will be having a higher capital budget expenditure than recurrent. This budget reflects a 4.4 billion naira increase over the 2020 figure, translating to a 4.13% increase in the state. Nasarawa State is located in the north-central region of the nation and has Engineer Abdullahi Sule as its governor. Kano State, one of Nigeria's critical economic hubs, also presented its budget. Kano State is estimating 147 billion naira in terms of what it plans to spend for next fiscal year. The theme of its budget is the budget of economic recovery and sustainable development. That's the budget theme for Kano State. Kano State is looking at a recurrent expenditure of 77.79 billion naira for the 2021 fiscal year. That is higher than its capital expenditure, which is 67.095 billion naira. Kano State is located in the northwestern region of Nigeria and has Dr. Ibrahim Ganduje as the governor. Let's move on to Katsina State. Katsina State also presented its budget recently to the State House of Assembly. Katsina State is looking at an estimated expenditure of 282.7 billion naira. 282.7 billion naira, that's the estimate of the Katsina State budget for 2021. Apart from that, the budget theme is the budget of recovery and consolidation. Like I told you, over 90% of all the budgets being presented have themes. So Katsina is looking at the budget of consolidation, and that's very important for it. The recurrent expenditure is 86.4 billion naira. 86.4 billion naira, while its capital expenditure is 196.2 billion naira, which shows that Katsina will be spending more on capital expenditure than recurrent expenditure. Katsina State is located in northwestern Nigeria and has Alhaji Aminu Bello Mazari as its state governor. That's from Katsina State. Let's move on to Yobe. Yobe State presented its budget also recently, an estimate of 106.9 billion naira to the State House of Assembly. The state's budget theme is the budget of recovery, consolidation, and economic rejuvenation. For those of our viewers, even our last week edition and this edition, you're seeing that one common theme for all these budgets, most of them so far, is the theme is the budget of recovery and consolidation. So that of Yobe is recovery, consolidation, and economic rejuvenation. This shows that its recurrent expenditure is 63.18 billion naira, while its capital expenditure is 43.81 billion naira. Still on the Yobe State budget, this estimate of 63.18 billion naira is 59.5% of the budget, while the capital is 40.95%. So the recurrent is higher than the capital, which one would think would be the reverse if we're looking at recovery and rejuvenation. But that is what we get from the state budget. Yobe State is located in northeastern Nigeria and has as its governor Mala Mai Buni. From the budgets we've received so far, even from that of last week and this, we're seeing that there's an improving trend of state governments taking capital expenditure higher than recurrent. But the major issue of how the states will perform in 2021 is how to get the revenue. Revenue remains a very fundamental issue for next year's budget, considering the volatility in the nation's major earner, crude oil, and considering the need for more fiscal discipline. So three things will come to mind before we go on to our next part of the outline. First is how states take seriously fiscal discipline. The narrative over time has been the need for state governments to cut down their costs. And this to every state governor. If you really mean business in governance at state level, you will show us how you're cutting down costs. And that has to do with, first, the aides and special assistant advisors to governors. Governors in this period will have to recalibrate their operations and take those hard choices of cutting down costs of their personnel attached to them and their expenditure, their allowances, and even down to salary. And this cuts across the State Executive Council, commissioners. And we also expect the State House of Assemblies to also respond. Because 2021 will be a very strategic year for Nigeria to fully recover from the impact of COVID and other aligning socioeconomic challenges. So that's the first area, cutting down costs, fiscal discipline. The second would be the innovative ways of revenue generation, because all these budgets we see are interesting, but the revenue, earning capacity to fulfill this mandate of the budget will be very key. And so, like they always say, the thinking cap now has to be there permanently on the heads of all the governors. Innovate, look at strategies, how to raise revenue. And third and the final would be project monitoring and evaluation. How efficient is that across the states in terms of implementing projects, evaluating those projects, and seeking accountability? This is where governments at the state level will have to be open more to civil society, the media, who would scrutinize all the projects and all their activities to see how they tie to the economic impact on the citizens. Because if you want to build a stadium and you cannot evaluate how it's going to tie to impacting the citizens in terms of economic empowerment, transforming their lives, and bringing more investment and revenue to the states, that's a clear example of a misplaced priority. So projects, accountability, evaluation and implementation is very key, but must be open for scrutiny and assessment. And we hope that states will take that. An example of a state, according to budgets, Nigeria's leading advocacy group, is Kaduna State. So if Kaduna State, from the assessment, is creating an open means of governance that people can scrutinize and assess, other states can learn from that and follow, down to even public procurement. We hope that the things will improve in 2021. I'll be here to continue to give you the updates and watch what's happening at state level. Now to the next phase of our discussion. The Federal Accounts Allocation Committee disbursed a total of 2.05 trillion naira to the three tiers of government and other statutory recipients in the third quarter of the year 2020. These figures were released Tuesday by the Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiatives. According to NATI, this was despite the COVID-19 pandemic and its attendant socioeconomic consequences. A breakdown of the figures showed that the federal government received 812.22 billion naira. State governments, which are our focus, received 676.5 billion naira, while local government areas got 429.16 billion naira. This was the first time that total disbursements exceeded 2 trillion naira for a quarter in 2020. The first time, according to NATI's quarterly review. The review analyzed the Federal Accounts Allocations Committee disbursements in the third quarter of 2020 using data from the National Bureau of Statistics and the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission. Speaking further, the statement said total disbursements of 2.05 trillion naira in 2020 third quarter were 6.2% higher than total disbursement of 1.93 trillion naira in 2020 second quarter and 5.6% higher than total disbursement of 1.95 trillion naira in first quarter 2020, the report stated. It, however, noted that the disbursements in third quarter 2020 were lower than those of the corresponding quarters in 2019 and 2018 as a whole and to the three tiers of government. According to the review, 2020 third quarter disbursements were 9.6% lower than 2.27 trillion naira disbursed in third quarter of 2019 and 9.8% lower than 2.28 trillion naira disbursed in the third quarter of 2018. This is called from Punch newspaper. So very clear, there's need to understand that times have changed and revenue will be challenged and governors have to be innovative across board. Let's look at the capital market. The capital market has been described as a wealth creation platform, but also a platform to raise long-term financing. And state governments have been encouraged over time to leverage this, the markets for long-term financing, especially infrastructure projects. So according to Securities and Exchange Commission, in a recent webinar, it disclosed that state governments in Nigeria have borrowed not less than 900 billion naira from the capital market since 1978. The Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Mr. Lamido Yuguda, made this disclosure at the webinar recently organized by the Nigeria Stock Exchange on ways subnationals can raise funds through the sale of state-owned enterprises. The SEC boss, who was represented by the Executive Commissioner in charge of legal and enforcement, Mr. Reginald Karawusa, disclosed that this amount was raised from the market through debt issuances since 1978. Speaking on privatization in Nigeria and the outlook for subnational economic development, the theme of the organized in partnership with the Nigerian Governors Forum and the Nigerian Investment Promotion Council, the SEC official said a significant part of these funds were deployed to financing capital projects. He stated, subnational issuers in Nigeria have been able to access the debt market over the years since 1978. State governments in Nigeria have raised close to 900 billion naira through debt issuances. A significant part of these funds were deployed to finance capital projects across the country. However, he said the ability of states to continue to borrow in a sustainable manner has been severely impacted in recent times, adding that with the huge infrastructure gap, decreased allocation from the federal purse owing to relatively low oil revenue, and the depressed level of internally generated revenues, states are barely able to pay salaries after servicing their outstanding loan obligations. Consequently, he advised that privatization is an avenue for governments to unlock economic potentials inherent in government-owned enterprises, adding that the focus on Nigeria's journey on privatization has largely been on the federal government. He also added several enterprises are still owned and controlled by the government, both at the state and federal levels. A number of these entities have the capacities to generate cash flows and corporate profitability. So in essence, 900 billion approximately has been assessed by state governments from the debt markets. And this is primarily through debt issuances. But one key takeaway that I would like to share with you from what the SEC DG said is the need for state governments to look at state-owned enterprises that need to be privatized, and that liberalization should go to the capital markets. Those are cash cows, those are generating revenue assets that can really transform the state's socioeconomic profile and improve revenue. So as state governments are proposing their budgets 2021, there should be an evaluation of all their state-owned enterprises, from Lagos to Akwa Ibom to Katsina to Yobe to Bauchi down to Delta states. Assess all the state-owned enterprises. Look at those ones that are viable in terms of how you can leverage the capital market to liberalize them. Because the era of so much expenditure on state-owned enterprises that can be liberalized has shifted. We're in an age of innovative approach to public finance. So this is a challenge to all the state governors to look inward and look at the low-hanging fruits of state-owned enterprises that can be liberalized. Because, as clearly outlined, revenues are declining. Federal government subventions are not as huge as before because of what is happening, the volatility in the crude oil price market. And this is a time for innovative governance. So we're hopeful that all the states across the geopolitical zones, particularly state governors who have forums for meeting and discussing, like the Southwestern Governors Forum, or what you call the Dawn Commission, the Northern Governors Forum, the Southeast Governors Forum, the South-South Governors Forum, will explore both state and regional ways in which they can harness, coalesce, and liberalize even state-owned enterprises that are at the regional level. For example, in the Southwest, we've seen examples with the Odwa investment and what is happening there. So this is the time. The time is now to take action, to leverage the capital market, to raise revenue, because when the capital market is leveraged by state governments with constant internally generated revenue, which is very key, and a good rating, because these are very key components. States with good ratings from globally renowned rating agencies like Fitch or S&P can access the markets, and with steady ways of getting internally generated revenue, which of course is one angle, state-owned enterprises that can be liberalized. They can access the market and raise long-term funds to finance capital projects, priority capital projects that will impact the citizens, transform the socioeconomic space, and drive inclusive economy at a subnational level. This must be taken seriously, and I guess all state governors will give it a top priority. And that'll be all for this edition of the Economy and Politics Show. If you have questions and comments around how the states governments can really make their state's budget 2021 different in terms of beyond the theme. The themes are nice, but practicalizing it and leveraging various ways for raising revenue and, of course, being innovative. You can send your views to news@prosheng.com. We would read them and respond to them appropriately and mention them in our subsequent editions. You can also follow us at WebTV on Twitter, and also other platforms at ProShare, and at Ecopolitics NG too, for updates on states and developments. On our website, www.prosheng.com, if you visit that website, go to our right bar, you scroll, you'll see states and local governments. We have updates and information, which ones on the ProShare platform around states and local governments. Thank you for being part of the show today. Looking forward to an interesting conversation tomorrow, same time, 9 a.m. To come your way again, thank you for watching. Have a nice day and stay safe.